inspiring you to build the life of your dreams by teaching you how to create a career you love. This is the Job Lab Podcast with your host, Nick Murphy.
Welcome, my friends, to episode 0 of the Job Lab Podcast. This is it. And episode 0, what is that, right? Is it a real number? What's episode 0 all about? This is a little bit of a unique episode, and it's the only one where it's going to be just me talking. We're going to talk about what we're going to be doing here on this show. What is the Job Lab Podcast? Why should you care? What's in it for you? What can you expect? What's the format of the show? I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and, hey, if I'm going to listen to this guy and his guests that he brings on, why should I have any faith in his opinion or his perception? Who are these guests going to be? And then how can you get involved? I want to make sure that you get involved in the show. The whole crux of this for me is how to take people forward in their career journey. So regardless of where you are, and that dives right into who the show's for, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey. Everyone from new grads struggling to find their way, people that have been in their job for 3 or 4 years, maybe out of school, and go, this is not what I signed up for. This is not really what I thought it was going to be. Or people that are super successful on paper and just feel like they're plateaued. They're just freaking bored, man. Like those re-entering the workforce after time off. If you've been staying home, raising your family, if you've been taking care of a loved one, if you've been serving our country in the military and are just coming back, those are all perfect situations and things that we want to make sure that we provide a ton of valuable content for you. So just like the intro says, it's half tactical job search, career advancement, career coaching, if you will. And the other half is more of the soft skills. What's the mindset you need to be successful? Why do some people seem to make it and others don't? Why does Sally get her way and Betty doesn't? It doesn't necessarily come down to what's on your resume or what font your headline on your LinkedIn profile is in, or how great your picture on LinkedIn might be, or how your resume comes across through the applicant tracking system. A lot of it has to do with mindset. It has to do with soft skills, the art of negotiation, understanding the people around you in a business environment, understanding how people play together and how that all goes. So a little bit about the format of the show. Like I said, this is the only one where you're just going to hear my voice. And this is going to be a very short episode to give you kind of the context you need to go into this and really understand what it's about and why you should care. So every other episode but this one is going to be me interviewing a guest, a decision maker, or an expert in their field. And that field is in some way going to be related to success or career growth. There's going to be an application for what they're great at, what they're a thought leader, what they're famous around the world in some cases for being an expert in. Some of those folks are going to be the decision makers, the talent acquisition leaders, the people that hire and train the hiring managers, the people that screen those resumes, the people that make the go, no go for launch decision on promotions. It's really, really important, I think, and a conversation that is really lacking out there in the market. There's a huge disconnect between how the game's actually played on the back end with companies and applicant tracking systems and politics inside organizations and bureaucracy, and what's actually spoken about in the open with job seekers. And so one of my fundamental core missions with this show is to bring that conversation to life. I'm going to bring you those leaders. They're going to give you their take, and it's going to be different. And I think it's important to take a variety of perspectives and a variety of experiences and let you sort it out in your own mind based on your unique circumstance, because none of us, I don't care if you've just got your first internship today and you're tuning in, or if you're 63 years old and looking at retirement, but you need to keep working, but you just don't want to go out like this. You don't want to go out the way that you're trending right now. And so you need to reinvent yourself at 63, or anybody in between, right? That's what's so fascinating about this. And I'm fairly certain that you can hear the passion in my voice because it's something that I get really, really excited about. So that's what the show is. Let's talk about what the show is not. I hate vanilla job content. Like if I see one more blog post or one more LinkedIn tangent about what to wear to the interview, or what color your tie should be when you dress for success, or serif or sans serif font on your resume, like I am going to scream. It's not about that. So this show is not going to talk about vanilla, boring dumbed down job content. You're intelligent people. And I think particularly for job search and career oriented conversations, so much of it's dumbed down to a level where you could talk to a monkey and tell them that, hey, you might want to put a shirt on before you go for your job interview. Really? Sherlock? Thanks. Appreciate that. What else? I got that part. I'm an adult. I got this. We're not going to talk about that kind of stuff. It's all going to be how to develop those skills, how to change your perspective or your context as you look at your trajectory, how to create better strategy, how to know when to use some of the skills you've had and when maybe to wait and plan more. And it's all about getting what you want out of your career. We only live once. We spend an exorbitant amount of time away from our families, away from the things that we might rather be doing. And we'll talk a lot about that, how to make sure that you're living your passion. Because I firmly believe that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that is my aspirational, perhaps somewhat naive hope for every single one of you, is that in some part through listening to this podcast as it evolves episode by episode, that something resonates with you. Something I said, a story, something one of our guests talks about, something one of you brings to the show and to the community, because this really is designed to be your show. We could talk at nauseam about an awful lot of different things, but if it's not relevant to what you're dealing with in your situation, then it's just not going to resonate with you. So we'll talk in a minute about how you can get involved, how you can get your questions in front of me and in front of our staff. Make sure that your particular situation is being addressed in one way or another. So I want to talk about probably the most uncomfortable thing for me, which is talking about myself, but it's important, right? It's important that if you're going to tune into this podcast, if you're going to let me in to your life and into your earbuds or into your phone, into your car, you really need to understand my story and my perspective and a little bit about who I am, because I think it's really important for me in this journey. And it's also a challenge, right? Like, it's as vulnerable as I could be, opening myself up with my whole story and all of these things to the world, right? And you'll hear through the story that I've been in the periphery, I guess, of the public eye from when I was an athlete and other things like that. But it's completely different when you let somebody into your worldview and into your experiences and into some of your most intimate personal stories. And I'm just going to jump in because let's do this, right? So my name's Nick. I'm married with 5 kids. That's right, 5. It's a his, hers, ours situation, but nonetheless, there are 5 of the little guys, 4 boys and 1 girl, 10, 9, 7, 4, and 2. If you're a parent of more than 3 kids, sometimes you have to do the math in your head to remember exactly how old they are. And my wife and I live in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places, right? So I bounce back and forth between Scottsdale, Arizona and Omaha. She owns a business here. She owns a dance studio. And so I like to joke with people that I have 5 kids and 311 stepkids, as if you need any more, right? So outside of the personal stuff, my background is I have a broadcasting degree, actually, which thus far you may not have been able to tell because it's been a long time since I've been able to use this kind of genre. But I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and moved to Scottsdale, Arizona when I was in middle school. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I didn't want to leave Missouri at the time, but in hindsight, it's one of the best things I was ever able to do. It really, for me, had I stayed in St. Louis, I would have either played hockey or soccer in the fall or winter. I can't remember exactly, but long story short, moving to Arizona got me into playing high school football, which turned into 1 year in junior college, which turned into a full ride scholarship to Arizona State, which turned into an NFL combine invitation, which turned into being an undrafted rookie free agent, which turned into bouncing around the NFL, signed 7 contracts in 4 years, including twice in NFL Europe. So I was able to live in Scotland and in Barcelona while playing in NFL Europe for the Vikings and the Eagles, and also spent time with the Ravens and the Chiefs in the NFL. So where the rubber meets the road for me in the context of this podcast is when I got done playing football. When I got done, I was 26, right? It's about an average career for an NFL player. 26 years old, I come back home and I well, I never had an internship and I didn't have a job outside of kicking an inflated piece of leather, which isn't exactly a transferable skill. So, I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was transitioning into the real world. And there's one story that I think you need to understand that really sticks out for me. And I was sitting in my condo in Phoenix and I was applying for jobs on a Sunday afternoon. And I remember scrolling through, and I wasn't one of those people that would just apply to everything. If you're doing that, stop. It's obnoxious. But I found 2 or 3 jobs that I thought I was actually a legitimately good fit for. And I was applying, and I took my time and, 25, 30, 40 minutes into an application, Sunday afternoon, mind you. And I hit submit on the very first one. And as I switch between tabs, or I go back to the job site, whichever one I was on, to look for the next one, my email dings. And after careful consideration, we've decided to go forward with a different candidate because you just don't meet the qualifications, blah, 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 blah. This is Sunday afternoon, man. Like 2.5, 3 minutes, careful consideration. Like nobody read this damn thing. Like, this is a joke. And it was the punch in the face that I needed to realize how broke the process is. And no one really ever gets back to you about things like that. So take all that as it is. I'm not somebody who waits around very often. Patience is not one of my bigger virtues, as you'll come to learn. But I decided to do something about it. So I was like, this is dumb. There's got to be a lot of people who meet the qualifications, the critical have to haves, right? Like I had a bachelor's degree. I was legally allowed to work. I fit it was an entry level sales job. It wasn't, I wasn't applying to be a physician's assistant or something with no medical training or anything ridiculous. It was a job that I was actually qualified to do, but I didn't have the silly little skills. So fast forward, not very long, few months, and I decide with a buddy of mine to launch one of the world's first video resume sites. And video resumes have never really taken off for a whole lot of reasons that I could share with anyone who's interested. But the idea wasn't to transplant or to really completely change an entire industry, but it was rather to supplement that silly little white piece of paper that is supposed to truly represent everything we are and could be. And it just seemed ridiculous to me that that's where we were. So we do that. And within WorkBlast, it was huge for me. We got to pitch venture capital companies. I won a fast pitch competition. We raised over $500,000 from friends and family. We were featured in a whole lot of publications, did a lot of interviews, talked to a ton of job seekers and college students and younger people that were struggling with the same kind of challenges. So the takeaways and things that I learned from that experience is what catapulted me into the next phase of my career. And that was moving into sales and leadership positions at CareerBuilder, at Monster, and at Indeed.com. So that in a long-winded story is how I got to understand the job industry. And I've had a unique perspective in that I've both sold to Fortune 500 companies as a salesperson inside some of the biggest job sites in the world. I've also started 2 or 3 of my own, including WorkBlast. And I've been that guy sitting there on a Sunday afternoon, applying with great intentions and hope and just these feelings that if you've ever been in that moment, you can completely understand. And so I'm bringing all that to you in episode 0 here so that you understand that I've seen a lot of the things we're going to talk about, whether it's through athletics, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through the corporate path, whether it's through being someone who came out at 26 as a college grad with basically no experience in anything but athletics and had to figure it out. I've been there and I've seen that, and I've talked to a ton of people that have really impacted not just my life, but I've seen them impact business. I've seen them impact industry. I've seen them impact and grow their teams and themselves into successful, wonderful, happy people. And so more than anything, that's what I want to bring to you guys as we go through here on the Job Lab podcast. So to me, one of the most important things in taking on this podcast and in taking on this show, and I'm super excited about where we're going to go with this and the people that we're going to bring on and the conversations I'm going to get to have, and some of the thought leadership and knowledge and just passion and brilliance that will bring to you, that you take just something, just that one nugget, because that's really what we're all after, isn't it? You know, that one aha where it's, man, had I just thought about it that way, or had I just heard that, or you know who else could benefit from hearing that is my sister, or so on and so forth. And in taking on the show, to me, I have an obligation not to waste any of your valuable time, whether it's 10 minutes on a drive from dropping your kids at school to the gym, or quickly when you walk around the office park at lunch and you throw in, you know, a podcast, you want to listen to some things. No matter how fleeting it might seem, I take that obligation to provide value and bring you great content very, very, very seriously. And it's really with that in mind that I want to remind and kind of end with, this is your show. So if you have questions, if you have things that are pressing, I want you to email me or to tweet us. We're on Twitter at the Job Lab Podcast, or you can email it to me at nick@thejoblab.com. I invite you to check out the joblab.com website. It's going to continue to evolve and add features and really great resources and downloads and things that we'll reference on the show. And with that, I am freaking excited to get going here. And to that point, Chris Doris is one of my favorite people on the planet, and he is our guest on episode number 1. He's an absolute stud, one of the most impactful people ever, and he's going to get you fired up about a lot of stuff. He's a mental toughness coach, first of all. He's one of the people that got me from potential, maybe I played in a preseason football game, to actually being able to make a little bit of money over 4 years playing in the NFL. And I'll give you just a little bit of a heads up. He doesn't do excuses. You're not ever gonna pull one over on Chris. He's gonna call it like it is, and he's going to call out any of our flaws in our mental toughness and really shoot holes in a lot of assumptions and a lot of things that you've been conditioned to believe. So episode 1, Chris Doris, you're definitely gonna want to check that out. And just do me this one favor. You've listened to this. If you're still listening at this point, you probably heard something that made you want to stick around. And so if you or someone you know feel like you could benefit from this, the biggest thing that you could do for them is to ask them to subscribe to this podcast. So we're going to continue to push the envelope with content. We're going to continue to put out episodes. Right now, we plan to do one weekly. I think as we get a little further down the road, that will become twice a week. I'd like to get to a Tuesday, Thursday kind of syndication at this stage. But right now, I plan to do it once a week. We're going to release them on Tuesday mornings. And anyone that you know that is, like we talked about at the beginning, they could be plateaued. They could be a high school kid trying to figure out what to do with their life. The earlier in your career you can learn some of these skills, the better. But that doesn't mean that if you're towards the end of your career that you can't fundamentally change how you go out and the taste that's left in your mouth at the end of your career. We want you to be happy. We want you to be fulfilled. And I'm really, really excited to go on that journey with you. So tune in next week. Check out episode number 1 with my friend, Chris Doris, and I will talk to you then.
You've been listening to The Job Lab with your host, Nick Murphy. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play today.